How many of you remember this speech? How many of you love this speech? How many of you know what it means for you? What does that mean for you? To follow your heart, have the courage to follow your intuition. How many of you really know what that means for you? And how many of you will follow it? How many of you will truly follow your intuition? Will follow your heart? Will go for what you really want? Because there's a real risk with this, and there's a real problem with this, and this is the problem. You're smart people. You're not built like Steve Jobs. You're not built like Steve Jobs because you're here. Steve Jobs wouldn't have been here. Steve Jobs was built in a certain way, and smart people know this. They know that follow your passion, do what you love, and money will follow, also equals starving artist. There are plenty of people in the world who are following their passion. Yet how many of them are creating the sort of life you want? And are you really willing to risk it, to go after what you really love, with the risk that you follow your passion and end up as a starving artist? There are very few people I know who are oriented towards Wall Street careers who would do that. And so when it comes down to it, you're not going to make those choices because no matter how many times you read that speech or you watch Steve Jobs speak, you're running this type of thought process. And this is the way we think, by the way. This is a real simple mental hack. This is a mind hack for you to work your brain, to run your own brain. Thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to actions. So you read this Steve Jobs speech and you get all inspired, you get all fired up about it. Then you come down to how does that feel? Well, you know, it actually feels like jumping off a cliff. That feels really scary to chase something that may be a little bit different to what you might have chased otherwise. And so that leads to the action. The action is you don't do it. And so how do you change that? How do you interject into that process? You begin feeding different thoughts into your mind. What might those thoughts be? It all depends on what you're trying to do. Steve Jobs was built a certain way. There's a lot of myths in our society where people say, well, overcome your fears and overcome your risks and follow guys like Steve Jobs, but you're not built the way he is. In a whole series of ways, he was a very special man. And one of the reasons is that the words like fear and failure didn't really resonate with him. And this is really what comes down to the essence of my work. People forward around that speech by Steve Jobs, they tell me how inspired they are. It doesn't matter to me. The question is, are you doing things that are inspired? His message wasn't be inspired by me. His message was go out and do things that you're inspired to do. Go out and become your own person. And in my world, I help people do very hard things. I work with very senior level folks on Wall Street, in politics, other leaders, and I help them do very hard things. And I do that by this type of diagram. I recruit these people. I'm looking for people who do hard things. Most people don't. Most people gave up on that a long time ago. They once challenged themselves to be the best they could be, but now they're pursuing something a little bit easier. They're not living on their edge. If you do hard things and you want to succeed, do you believe that you can? Truly believe that you can? Maybe in a maniacal way, like Steve Jobs, who truly believed that he could do anything. You have to have a desire to be exceptional. It doesn't matter who you are in this world at the moment. The world has gotten more competitive. As one of my clients said to me recently, when he is having his kid interview to get into preschool, he knows the bar's been raised. The bar's been raised. To win on Wall Street these days, whether it be in hedge funds, in private equity, in banking, you have to be exceptional. How do you do that? You have to be willing to take risk. I'm not talking about the sort of risk that is necessarily starting your own business or starting your own firm. Look at folks like Ray Dalio. This is what they did decades ago. When people look at the success they've created today, it all goes back to what they were doing decades ago. And it comes down to a willingness to take risk. And risk is defined in many different ways. Risk is committing yourself to getting promoted. I truly want to make partner. Bang. Then what? One of the techniques I use with people to get promoted is they need to run an internal track. Inside your firm, you need to convince people to promote you. One of those steps is to go to them and say, I want you to promote me. And what happens when you do that? You run the risk they don't. You run the risk that when you come back at the end of the year, if you didn't get promoted, people say, oh, you really wanted to get promoted and you didn't. That's risky for people. So they hang back, they hold back, and they say, well, we'll see if it happens. They don't really go for it. And there's greater risk in that, which is you don't get what you want. And my world is all about getting what you want. If you're going to work every day, you might as well have that job work for you. I think of your vehicle as your career as your vehicle for your life. If your career is getting you what you want in your life, then it's working. And that's what my work's about, tools that make it feel comfortable. If you can take that risk, there's only one way you'll do that, when you believe that you can succeed at it. My work is all about empowering you to feel comfortable, not with nice words, process and skills, getting better and better and better.